Hey guys, in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make these chocolate chip cookies and these fudgy brownies. These are both tasty recipes, but then I modified them to fit my own needs, and I did not take any footage of the end result, so I hope these photos will suffice. So the first thing we will be making are these chocolate chip cookies, which I adapted from Tasty's best chewy chocolate chip cookies or something like that. So for the first step in this recipe, you're gonna have to open your microwave and put half a cup of butter or margarine in and melt that until it is fully melted. Make sure you do this in 20 or 30-second intervals. Next, you're gonna be taking a full block of chocolate. I'm using dark chocolate, but you can do a mix of milk and dark chocolate or just use milk chocolate, and then basically just chop it up into small chocolate chunks, and these will act as our chocolate chips. The reason why using chocolate chunks are better is because it melts a lot easier, so especially when they're nice and fresh out of the oven, they're nice and gooey and melty, and you also just get more chocolate in your cookie, which is amazing. Also, yes, my chopping skills are horrendous. I have really bad dull knives, and I am also scared of cutting myself, so please do not comment on how bad my chopping skills are. After you finish chopping all your chunks, you should put them into a bowl and put them in the fridge just to make sure they don't melt while you're preparing the rest of the batter. In a large bowl, you're gonna pour your now melted butter, and you're also going to add half a cup of sugar and half a cup of brown sugar. Now this is where I modified the recipe, because in the original recipe they had 3/4 cup of brown sugar, and that was just way too much. Using a whisk, you're gonna whisk all these ingredients together until they are one homogeneous mixture, which means there's no signs of separation and they're all nicely mixed together into one mixture. You can also whisk this by hand, but I am lazy and not very strong. Into this mixture, you're gonna pour in 1 egg, which I cracked into the measuring cup, and you're also gonna add your vanilla extract, or in my case vanilla crystals, because I can't really find vanilla extract here. And then you're just gonna whisk this together until it is light and fluffy, which is about 1 or 2 minutes. Sometimes I go a bit over, which is fine. You will see that it starts to thicken, and just keep doing it until it thickens and it's a lot lighter in color. Into the bowl, I'm going to sift my flour, and I am going to be using around 1.5 to 2 cups. I kind of just eyeball this. The original recipe says to use 1 1/4 cup, but I feel like that is not enough. And also, you're going to sift in your baking soda, which is a teaspoon of baking soda. The reason why you want to sift your mixture is to make sure there are no lumps later, so you don't bite a cookie and just get like a lump of flour in it. After you've sifted in all your dry ingredients, you're going to fold everything in with a spatula. The reason why you want to fold it in is you don't want to overmix it, because if you overmix it, the cookies are going to get tough because of the gluten and all that science stuff. I'm just using this pink rubber spatula that I really like. If you feel that your dough is too wet, you can add more flour, and I would say in total I used around 2 cups of flour and started off with like 1.5 cups. The texture that you're going for is you want it to be thick and scoopable, but you don't want it to be like a full-on sugar cookie dough. In this last addition of flour, I'm also going to add a teaspoon of salt. The reason why I like putting in the salt like a little bit closer to when I add in the chocolate chunks is because I find the flavor to be more prominent, and that way it will better balance the sweetness of the cookie, and also it helps enhance the flavor of the cookie itself. Now that a majority of the dry ingredients are mixed into the mixture, you're going to add in your chocolate chunks. The reason why you want to do this while there's still a little bit of flour is just to make sure that you don't accidentally overmix. You also want to make sure you fold in the chocolate chunks with the rubber spatula like you did with the rest of your dry ingredients. I'm going to go put this dough in the fridge, and I covered it with a towelette. You can also just use cling wrap, but I'm trying to help save the environment here. You are then going to put this dough in the fridge for at least 30 minutes, and I'm just going to leave it in the fridge while I go make the brownies. The next thing we are going to be making are these fudgy brownies, which I adapted from Tasty's best fudgy brownies recipe. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to preheat the oven to 180 degrees Celsius. You are then just going to melt 3/4 cup of butter in the microwave and do it in the same 30-second intervals that you did with the cookie. You are then going to chop up your chocolate block the same way you did with the cookies. The only difference is you're going to save half of the chocolate and put it in the fridge, and the rest of the chocolate you are going to be melting. You are then going to start preparing your pan that you are going to bake your cookies in. The way I prepared it is I used some melted butter that I had left over from melting the butter beforehand, and then I also put some parchment paper down. The reason why you want to prepare your pan so early on is because the batter can quickly deflate, so you want to get it in and into the oven as soon as possible. So now I'm going to be melting my chocolate. Since I had some excess melted butter left over, I like to add that into the chocolate to make it melt easier, because sometimes if you just put straight up chocolate in, it takes a lot longer, and to have like a little bit of liquid in the bowl with it helps it melt easier. Also going to melt this into 30-second intervals, but after each 30-second you're going to take a spoon and mix it around, because the residual heat will also help melt the chocolate. Into a large bowl you're going to pour in your butter, and you're also going to pour in 1¼ cup of granulated sugar. After that, you're just going to whisk this mixture together until it is a nice homogeneous mixture. A little tip for you guys who are baking, I recommend pouring the melted butter into the bowl first rather than putting in the chocolate first, because putting the melted butter first will help kind of dissolve the sugar and make it mix easier. Into the bowl you are going to add 2 eggs, and I use a little spoon to get out all the eggshell that I accidentally missed. And also you're going to pour in your vanilla extract. As I said before, I didn't have vanilla extract, so I kind of just poured in a little bit of maple syrup to help add some flavor. Using a hand whisk, you're going to whisk this mixture together until it is nice and thick and fluffy. This step is very important because the eggs are the only leaveners in this brownie, which means it's the only thing that'll help make it rise, and this is why this step is very important, because you don't want a dense brownie, you want a nice fudgy brownie that's not too dense. You can tell when the mixture is done when it is nice and thick, and also it is going to become lighter in color. You're then going to pour your melted chocolate into this mixture. Make sure your melted chocolate isn't too hot because it might accidentally cook the eggs, and then you're just going to whisk it together until it is a nice homogeneous mixture and you can't like see any streaks of chocolate in there. Into this mixture, I'm going to sift in 3/4 cup of flour and 1/4 cup of cocoa powder, and the secret ingredient, which is a teaspoon of espresso powder. And this espresso powder will help just enhance the flavor of the chocolate, and it doesn't really make the brownies taste like coffee. You are then going to fold in all the dry ingredients with a rubber spatula like you did with the cookies. In baking, the majority of the time you're going to fold in your dry ingredients to avoid over mixing. And it is very important, this recipe, especially because the only leaveners are eggs and you don't want the eggs to deflate if you overmix them. You are then going to pour the rest of the chocolate chunks that you saved in the fridge and fold it into the mixture. You're then going to pour the batter into the prepared pan and use a spatula to smooth out the tops and the edges so it is all nice and even. You are then going to put the brownies in the preheated oven. I then put a timer for 15 minutes just to make sure I check the brownies halfway through, but in total you should bake them for about 30 minutes. This is what it looks like when I took it out of the oven. You want to make sure you let it rest for at least 10 minutes because the residual heat might continue cooking brownies. Now while the brownies are resting, I'm going to start baking the cookies. So here I have a parchment lined sheet, and I also have a cookie scoop, and 1 scoop is around 1 tablespoon. Using the cookie scoop, I'm going to scoop the dough onto the parchment lined baking sheet, and 1 baking sheet can make around 12 cookies. I did 3x4, but obviously it depends on your baking sheet. I also kind of make sure I push down all of the dough into the scoop so they're around the same size. I'm then going to put them into a 180 degrees Celsius oven. This is preheated from when I made the brownies, and I'm going to put the cookies in for 8 minutes. And this is what it looked like when the cookies came out of the oven. For some reason, this batch didn't spread that much. Usually when I made it before they spread, but you know what? It's fine. It all tastes good. That's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope to be making more baking videos in the future, so stay tuned.
Roll the credits.